Greetings, my name is Kirby, Director of College Relations for the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences. Is it indeed an honor to welcome each of you to Clemson's campus and welcome back to all of you who are alumni of this great institution. Today, we celebrate and begin a tradition that has been 100 years in the making. The ceremony we do today is in honor of the 100th anniversary of the Smith-Lever Act and honoring one of our very own, Frank Lever, a South Carolinian who loved this state and who loved this institution as he served and cared for the citizens, not only of our state, but from around the world, as we have seen the impact extension has made on our state, nation, and world. This event would not have occurred had someone not had the idea. Often we have ideas, but to have the energy, the influence, and the leadership to make it happen must be coupled with that. And not only making it happen, but making it happen in about 2 months because they just started their job. Please join me in welcoming the individual who truly inspired this event we have today, our new Director of Extension in South Carolina. Many of you know him well, Dr. Tom Dobbins.
Well, number one, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had a whole lot of folks behind me and a whole lot of people helping me. Let me tell you, today I'm excited about being at Clemson University. I'm excited about where we're going. We met with the president yesterday, and he understands extension, he understands agriculture research, and he understands teaching. And if you don't believe me, ask Dr. Parr or Dr. Askew. It is an exciting time, and the people that we're going to induct into the Hall of Fame in just a little bit, they would have been jumping up and down out of their seats right now to have a president and an administration from top to bottom that supports us the way that they do. The reason that we came about this vision is Cathy Smith and I'd just been announced as the Director of the Extension Service, and we got to talking about the South Carolina State game. And we got to talking about how we could recognize people in Extension and bring Extension back to the prominence that it deserves and needs at Clemson University. And so we just talked about the game and having a game here. And then when I came back to Clemson University, I read a passage from A. Frank Lever. And it was A. Frank Lever that started the Extension Service movement. And I'll talk a little more about him later. But it was his vision, his passion that knew that if we could do this, that we would change America. And then I got to thinking about all the extension agents that impacted my life as growing up on the farm in Townville, South Carolina, and impacted my mother's life and impacted my father's life as we grew up, or as they grew up. And I remember the stories that they told about Mr. Hopkins. And then I remember the times that Jake Barker and I and Lee Keys, and we won't go into those, Lee, about all the trips that we took together, but what they really meant to us. And these people were truly giants in the field. And then I got to thinking about, well, you know, we haven't recognized any of them. And so with that, I sat down with Kirby, and I came in and I said, Kirby, what do you think? And Kirby kind of gets this little look on his face, and he says, oh my God, Dobbins is coming up with another grand plan. But as we sat by and thought about it, we said, we got to make this happen. And so we started with just a little vision and a little courage and a little know that we had to do this. And so today we're going to honor 7 of the most outstanding people in extension that we've had in the last 100 years. And we're going to honor them because a person from South Carolina had the vision to start the Extension Service. The National Extension Service is based on the South Carolina model. And that's pretty amazing. Because of South Carolina, we did change America. We did change the world. And it's not because the Extension Service is where we take the classroom from Clemson University to the people. And under our leadership with Dr. George Askew as our vice president, he doesn't believe in walls. He doesn't believe in barriers. He believes in that we take this as a unit to the people, whether it's at our research centers, whether it's our county extensions office, or whether it's our halls of academic here at Clemson University. we will deliver it to the people. We're not going to just stop here with this Hall of Fame. We're going to continue to induct people into the South Carolina or the A. Frank Lever County Extension Hall of Fame. This is just the beginning. And I want to thank, and Kirby will thank the people on the committee and recognize them and give them their due. But I am excited to be here. I think this is a great event, an event that we're going to continue happen at Clemson University. And I want to thank every one of you for being here. But I also want to thank all of the county extension faculty and county staffs that are here that made the trip up here. Because without the county staffs, we would not have an extension service. We would not have a 4-H program. We would not be able to deliver the type of programs that we need to deliver to the people of South Carolina. So we have got to make sure that A. Frank Lever's dream constantly stays true, and that is to have a strong county extension program. Thank you, Kirby.
Thank you, Dr. Dobbins. One of the products of modern day extension is the difference it makes for youth. To deliver our invocation today, we have our current South Carolina State 4-H Council President. Please join me in welcoming Ashtyn Kinney to offer our invocation.
Please join me in a moment of reflection as I offer this invocation. Today we are gathered to celebrate the accomplishments of Congressman Frank Lever and also to recognize his family. Likewise, today we honor the lives, careers, and services of those who we induct into the Frank Lever County Extension Agent Hall of Fame. As a 4-H member, Mr. Lever and the work he accomplished has greatly impacted my life, along with many other youth. Though I and most of you never had the honor of meeting Mr. Lever, he has helped me and you to become the persons we are today. This can also be said for the men and the women we induct into this Hall of Fame today. Their lives have impacted countless youth and adults. The cooperative extension services that the Smith-Lever Act formed is the foundation of the 4-H program. Without the Act and without the program, I would have never gained the skills that I have learned throughout my 4-H career. Likewise, many of you might not have had the opportunities that you have had in your lifetimes. The way I like to explain it is through the 4-H pledge. I pledge my head to clear thinking, to come up with bright, innovative ideas to change the future. My heart to greater loyalty, to show compassion to others and to reach out a helping hand. My hands to larger service, to help those who are in need. And my health for better living, to say no to drugs and alcohol and other harmful things for my club, my community, my country, and my world. I have learned what it means to be a productive citizen in today's world, and it is all in part to thanks to Mr. Lever. He believed education and knowledge empowered people of all ages, and his ideas are still creating change 100 years later. For that, I am very grateful. May we all rejoice in God's holy name as we seek blessing on today's ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashtyn. Ashtyn is just one example of our 4-H youth, and though you see how well she did speaking, you should see her on a horse if you want to see a true 4-H'er. Thank you, Ashtyn. As Dr. Dobbins mentioned, we are thrilled with leadership from top to bottom that's making a difference in agriculture at Clemson today. Please join me in welcoming a man who willingly said yes to wear multiple hats to lead agriculture at Clemson. After having been appointed as Vice President for Public Service and Agriculture, which he specifically asked to make sure was put back in our name, he said yes to serving as interim dean for the college, that we might see synergy and unity as we consider the future. Let's welcome Dr. George Askew.
Good afternoon. It's my pleasure to be here today. Kirby told me to be brief, and it's hard to be brief on a celebration like this, so I'm going to start by saying, wow. Why did it take 100 years? But I guess the celebration of the Smith-Lever Act prompted all this, like you said, and all the land-grant universities in the state are all having celebrations this year. It's nice, but nobody can have a celebration like we can have at Clemson, because nobody had Mr. Lever like we had at Clemson. And to make sure we didn't miss that opportunity and we celebrated it was really, really important, and we didn't miss it, and I think we're doing it really, really well. Started back a few months ago. Mr. Lever was recognized by the legislature and his family was there. When you see the Hall of Fame, you're going to see a nice resolution they passed on their behalf. It's a great thing. The hallway is a long hallway in Bar Hall, so we have room for lots of photographs. So this will not be the last of the commemorations. We'll have many more to come. It's been my pleasure for 34 years to be at Clemson. And I know there's a lot of alumni out there, so I welcome you back. And I welcome those of you that have family that are alumni. And I always say that there's two kinds of people in the world, those that went to Clemson, those that wish they did. So everybody then is welcome back at Clemson University. It's nice to be the Vice President for Public Service and Agriculture, and it's nice to be the interim dean. It gives me a chance to have some unique perspective on how the two fit together, because often they're viewed as separate entities. But PSA, as we call it in South Carolina, is a major funder of research and extension, as well as our regulatory services and our veterinary unit. And we are integral to the college, and the college is integral to us. The expertise the faculty and the staff bring to play throughout the state make it all work. That's what's unique about the land-grant system, is we take academic expertise, which on most campuses stays on the campus, and we use it to solve people's problems. Mr. Lever saw that. He called it the Clemson model. How can you beat that and to start out a national program with the Clemson model? And we've been through some tough times at Clemson. Those of you who followed the budgets and followed the legislature know we've been beat up and knocked down along with everybody else in the state when the economy went bad. But we're still here. And I can tell you with our new President Clements, who sends his congratulations today and his regrets he couldn't be here. It's a very crazy time this week with football and all that. But he is absolutely 100% extension. His first act as a Clemson University almost employee was to come to the extension conference at his request back in December. He hadn't even started work yet. The first thing he did for Clemson was to come and speak directly to our extension employees at their conference. I thought that told us a lot. He mentioned extension in his welcome to Clemson speech the day he was hired. That said a lot. And since then, he's been true to everything he said. He is a man of his word. He believes in the land-grant system, loves extension, asked me to bring my directors in yesterday. We met with him for an hour. He talked to each of them about what they did at the university, thanked them for their service, asked them to thank all their employees for their service. He met this morning for an hour with the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences faculty and staff, said the same thing, that agriculture at Clemson University is not just a college, it is an integral part of what we do. It's why we're here. As Dr. Reel will tell you, from the very beginning, Mr. Clemson's dream was to serve the people of South Carolina, to help people get an education and solve problems that could not go to a university otherwise. That's why Clemson University is here. And it's still here for that same reason. And extension is the front door. We say that over and over again, but 46 counties, our regional offices, our extension centers are all the front door to Clemson University for most of the state. How we perform, what we do, how we say, how we act in those offices is how people think of Clemson University. And I can tell you, our extension staffs and our research staffs out in the state are exemplary employees. They do us well every single day. And I hear compliments from people that are Georgia fans and Alabama fans and USC fans. When it comes to Clemson University extension and our research agriculture programs, there's no doubt everybody supports us out there. So thank you all for coming today. Once again, on behalf of the President, on behalf of the Vice Presidency for Public Service and Agriculture, on behalf of the College of Agriculture, Forestry, and Life Sciences, our faculty and staff, and our almost 4,000 students, agriculture is here to stay at Clemson. It's going to keep growing. It's going to keep growing out in the state, research-wise, extension-wise, student-wise. We're not going anywhere. Just stand back and keep watching us grow. So, wow.
Thank you, Dr. Askew. Wow is an appropriate term. And because we are celebrating 100 years of extension, we felt it was vital that if we brought you onto Clemson's campus, you needed to attend a history lecture. And we have a true icon to do that. Many of you probably remember Dr. Jerry Reel and the many roles he has played at Clemson when you were here as an alumnus. He currently is doing a marvelous job in curating the precious history and traditions of this institution. If you have not had a chance to peruse or read his 2 books on the High Seminary of Learning, they're wonderful. But because he is a professor, he's used to an hour and 15 minutes or 50-minute lectures. So I have told him I'm a standing MC, and if you see me have to move to Dr. Reel and hug him, you know that I am explaining that we're not having a classic classroom lecture. But the reality is we could sit and listen to Dr. Reel, I have for hours, because he brings to life Clemson's history and past like no one else can. So we're so thankful that Mr. and Mrs. Reel are here today. His wife has joined them to share with us a little bit about this man, Frank Lever, and what Extension has meant to Clemson University. Please join me in giving a very warm Extension Ag welcome to Dr. Jerry Will, our university historian and a professor emeritus.
This is going to be a physics lecture. We're going to see if this can stay there by itself the whole time. Please watch it carefully. Ignore the man behind the curtain. I am Oz, the great and the terrible. That's my favorite line, I think, in all movies. It's just a great line about how people defraud us all the time, one way or another. I'm assuming you know an awful lot about land grants. I'm not going to try to rehearse the whole history of land grants for you, but let me start by just saying this. There are 3 critical land grant acts that were enacted over a period of time, and they were the ideas of different people at different times. The first of those acts is known as the Moral Act. It's not moral in the sense of being good, although it did good, and so it is unusual for a federal act to be a moral institution. They don't usually work that way. They almost always surprise us by what they produce. And that act established, I think it's very interesting to hear what that act said. It says very simply that any state which is not in a situation of rebellion against the government, we were in that process, not all of us, but some of us were in this state. I'm not from South Carolina, so I wasn't involved in any of that. But the point is, a little less than half of the state was involved in the act of attempting to overthrow the government. So they were excused from the Land Grant Act. It went on to say, however, that any state which accepted the land grant money was to have a college that taught agriculture and engineering. They called it mechanics in those days. And they went further and said, and to teach military tactics and strategy. Those were closely allied in their minds because of what was happening in the United States when a majority of the graduates of West Point were on the other side. It's amazing that the majority of the people from the Naval Academy were on the Union side. I couldn't figure it out, but then I finally realized why. They had all the boats. We didn't have any boats down here, so they didn't know anything about that. So that was an effort to democratize the armed forces in this country. We stop and forget sometimes that only a few decades before our own conflict, Mr. Napoleon, whatever his title was at the time, overthrew the French government with a very highly centralized cabal made up of a group of men who graduated together from the French military academy. And I am quite sure Mr. Lincoln was looking at that and saying, oh my goodness, I've read about this before, I don't want this to happen again. So it was there. Now, fortunately, after that unpleasantness, as it said in Charleston, was over and life began creaking back to normal, South Carolina was still in the condition it was. As Mr. Clemson said, our condition is wretched in the extreme. That's pretty kind of blunt. He said, our only hope is for education. And if education doesn't work, then more education. And if more education doesn't work, then more education yet. It's sort of like democracy. If democracy isn't working, the best thing you can do is have some more democracy. The worst thing you can do is to put together a group like we're facing right now in the Middle East to make everybody try to think exactly the same about some one thing. Well, anyway, that's not the point of this talk. And I have to go on because he's beginning to look worse than hovering over there. The second of the land grant acts is called the Hatch Act, and that has nothing to do with the ship. That was named for a congressman who was from Missouri at the time, although he was a Kentucky native. And he developed the idea that if we're going to get anywhere with agriculture, we've got to improve the product. We can't just keep planting cotton. We've got to plant something else. Cotton's wrecking us. So research became the critical part. And the land grant schools, which were the 1862 land grants, Clemson is one of those, then in fact had the Hatch Act added onto them, and that's going to have a profound and an unfortunate effect, which I'll touch on in a minute, because the directors of the extension stations, we have 5 of them in this state, the directors of the extension stations met once a year. This was the first major educational junket that people used to go on. Now we go to conferences all the time. You have a splinter and you have to have a conference of all the medical people at universities to discuss where the splinter was and how it got in the finger and on and on and on. So my point in this is that it was the research people who got together regularly and said, we've got to do something to get what we're learning out to the people fast. And so it was the research people who began pushing the notion of some kind of outreach. Now, as that happened, that is what has resulted in what we know today as the Smith-Lever Act. It's one of those acts that's got 2 names because it's got a sponsor in the House and a sponsor in the Senate. Senate sponsor doesn't really matter. He was from Georgia. And so obviously that's of no concern to us. We just give thanks that he was pliant to the wishes of a Clemson man once. They weren't good about that last weekend. Let me tell you about the man who is really the hero of this whole thing, and that is Asbury Francis Lever. When I first started doing research on him years ago, I thought, my heavens, that's an impressive name. Asbury. Oh, I could just feel the Methodist vibrations there. You know, there they are. How come this guy's next name isn't Cokesbury or something like that? No, it turned out to be Asbury Francis. Francis is an interesting name there, because when you think of Francis, I always think of St. Francis, the guy who likes all the squirrels and all the little plants and all the little butterflies and all those nice creatures of our God and King. And so I find that very refreshing that he bears those 2 names. He was born January the 5th, 1875 in Spring Hill, Lexington County, South Carolina. Now, that's close to some place in the center of the state. I understand that in the center of the state, there's this large hole, which is called a black hole, that sucks great amounts of stuff in, and no one knows what it is or where it goes. It goes, and there it is. And he was educated at the county public schools. He wasn't sent off to a private school. He was educated at the county schools. At that time, it was very fashionable for the elite of every county to send their sons away for education. Where would they have sent them? The most popular one was the Porter Military Academy down in Charleston, which we know today as, you got to say it right now, you got to say Porter Gaud. You can't say Goud. Goud means it's got to be Gaud, so you know who's teaching over at that county. After the county public schools, he went to Newberry for his education. Well, we have a whiff of the Lutherans passing through us here now. Industrious, hardworking, and he was industrious and hardworking. This was a good man. He became secretary. He taught, incidentally, in public schools for 2 years. I'll bet a lot of you all have been or are right now public school teachers. And you just think, will he please get on with this and stop digressing? Okay. He was a public school teacher for 2 years, and then his local congressman, whose name was J. William Stokes, asked him to come to Washington with him and be his secretary. Have any of you been to Washington and been to a congressman's office? How many of you have done that? How many of you have walked in and found one secretary in the office? Simply amazing, amazing. You think back, Mr. Calhoun had to take his daughter with him to be secretary. And this man, Stokes, hired a neighbor to be the secretary. He went up there. Evidently, he didn't have enough to do because he went to Georgetown while he was there. Now, all of you who are basketball fans know about Georgetown. Georgetown's a great basketball team. But did you know that Georgetown was founded in 1789? That's the same year the United States was founded. Did you know that Georgetown is a Catholic school? Even more interesting than that, Georgetown is a Jesuit school. It is rigorous. It is not about foolishness. They don't have First Friday parades at Georgetown. When the First Friday parade was first discussed here, I remember someone asked this question. Given the size of Clemson, where are they going to parade from to? And there is some truth in that question. You have to go around the block 4 times, to have a parade. So anyway, he went there and he studied law, and in 1899, 2 years after he had taken a new job, he got his law degree. He did very well. He took the bar exam in South Carolina, and since he knew the difference between clear liquor and sour mash, he was judged okay to come to the bar, or something like that. I don't think that's right, but it was something like that. And he was admitted to the South Carolina bar, but he never practiced. He never practiced a day of law, but he had that sharp, sharp mind that could divide things and approach them in a logical fashion to serve a problem and correct it. Well, he got married in 1911, and he and his wife did see each other often enough to have 2 children, which is a good thing, because then there are descendants of the family. He was regularly a delegate to the state party convention. Now that's the way to get ahead, is you find out where the seat of power is, and in this state it's in the state party conventions, and he went to them quite regularly. 1896, 1900, 1901 he was elected to the State House, and he had to retire, of course, as his boss's secretary at that point. His boss, without him there, upped and died. You see the hands of God moving faithfully in this. This is the Presbyterian part of this discussion. The hand of God is moving in here. And the governor, who has the choice to do that, to make an appointment, appointed him to take you. Creeping closer to me? Yes, I thought. Okay. Anyway, he was selected to fill the vacancy, and that he did. He was then elected in the first election that was held, and he won 5 consecutive elections to the thing. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. We don't keep most of ours around that long. We have a tradition of long service, but we don't really keep them around if you look at it. We get mad at them and send them home. He stayed around. He became, just because he was so senior and so smart, he became chairman of the Education Committee. And this is going to be an important part of this story. He's got his foot in 2 camps, education, and almost immediately thereafter, he was appointed chairman of the Agriculture Committee. So he's got 2 committees that are, for us at this place, powerful committees, and he could use them for us. Well, he did a lot of things there, and his greatest achievement is, of course, the Smith-Lever Act. I don't have to tell you that the Smith-Lever Act produced something called cooperative extension. It is cooperative because the county, the state, and the federal government pay for it. The cooperation balance shifts from time to time. It's kind of like the man on a ship watching the tide go out, and he hasn't got the anchor up yet. So sometimes it's like that. it was doing pretty well. He worked with Hope Smith of Georgia to make it a national program. Clemson had a good fortune, and the good fortune was we were the inspector of fertilizer. And the state law said if we didn't have to use all the money to pay for the inspection of the fertilizer, our trustees could use it for anything they wanted. That's pretty good. And rather than building a lot of monuments, they invested in the Cooperative Extension Service. So before there was federal legislation, this is why we're the model, before there was federal legislation, we had trains going out to all these communities. The other day I told you that on one of those trains, or almost every one of those trains, was a man named Lee, Rudolph Lee. He was an architect. What's he got to do with agriculture? Well, you have to have barns. You also have to have schools. Go around this state, keep your eyes peeled for these little tiny wooden schools, usually with two doors, one door for girls to go in and one door for boys to go in. We didn't want them to get in trouble, so we started them apart early on. Those were all designed by Mr. Lee, and he would go and give lectures to the men of the community how you can build your own school. He came, he had a list of instructions. Here's the plankage you need. Here's how many nails you have to buy. Here's how many bricks you have to buy. If you want a school bigger than 5 classrooms, you better hire yourself an architect and a building. I'm here to tell you how to build it yourself. There are over 100 of those built in South Carolina. My wife's now waving at me. So I want to assure you that even from the beginning, it was not pure row crop agriculture. Just like your 4-H, which of course grows out of a South Carolina program, it was in fact the whole person that we were trying to serve, and to serve desperately. By 1918, I bet I can sidestep faster than you. Okay, by 1918, we already had a county agent in every county without a penny of federal money. Now, do you think that mattered? Let me just tell you how it mattered. In 1917, the worst drought that ever hit the United States, the drought that you now know as grapes of wrath, that drought began. It hit all of America from Montana to Texas to the east. That's everybody I know. I don't think anybody I know lives much less than that. And all of America from the Ohio River Valley south. It's a lot of folks. That drought reduced in Arkansas the crop yield by 61%. You take away 61% of a farmer's crop, he has to feed his family. Where is he going to get the money to pay back the fertilizer? He can't. They were going broke. And that started the greatest migration that ever happened in the United States ever. And that is all of the farmers thrown off the farms by this oddity of climate, and suddenly they're moving elsewhere. White people move to town. They might be able to get jobs in the mill. Black people couldn't get jobs in the mill. Coleman Blease, the governor of this state, had already fixed that. There was no place for them. So where did they go? They went where there were jobs, Detroit. By 1930, there were more native black South Carolinians living outside of South Carolina than lived inside of South Carolina. Think of the immense waste that produced. It's horrifying. Nonetheless, they rode out to do it. They developed youth programs, family programs. I remember my grandmother. I spent time on a farm. You may think I'm a city boy, but I spent time on a farm, and I remember the 4-H ladies coming out. I still have my grandmother's aluminum tray that she beat out as part of this thing with a curlicue edge. I don't know why she did it, but it kept her busy and off my tail for the whole afternoon. I was happy. Now we use it to great effect we put our boiled crawfish on it, and we pick the crawfish from that. So you see, it all comes back to nature, regardless of what you do. I have one more minute, okay. The youth program is probably the single most important thing that it has done. And if you have ever had the opportunity, as I have, to go to a 4-H conference and to see these young people adjudicating, speaking, singing, dancing, doing all kind of crazy stuff, you say, this is a lot better for them than most anything else we tried to dream up. And I hate to say it, sometimes even the church youth fellowship doesn't do as good a job of civilizing these young people as that thing does. It continued. This man poured out works from the legislature. This man poured out works from the legislature. Besides the Smith-Lever Act, he succeeded in the Cotton Futures Act, which is the first thing to stabilize the cotton price for the cotton farmer. He created the Federal Warehouse Act, in which the federal government bought the cotton from them, stored it in the warehouse, gave the farmer a receipt, and the federal government required that the banks had to treat that receipt like money. That's collateral when you had to buy some money. It put the economy back working again. All of these things, Food and Control Act of 1917 occurred in the middle of World War I. Now, we're in the 100th anniversary of World War I right now. And Mr. Wilson was suddenly realizing there are going to be a lot of Europeans who aren't going to have food next year. And when we finally get this war over, like 1918, then we're going to have to start feeding all those people. We've got to feed all our people first. So what do we have to do? We have to control the food and its distribution. Something very un-American about that. We were not at all happy. A lot of South Carolinians just knew we'd gone to hell in a handcart. But during war, food production was controlled, and the government said, you need to grow more sugar beets. You stop growing sugar beets. You need to grow more beans and peas. And all of these things were stored and sent and saved and brought Europe through the horrible years after that war. Do you remember that after that war, Europe had a major influenza epidemic that killed 20 million people right after a war that killed about 6 million? There are a lot of dead people. But there were still a lot of people to eat. Not each other, but at least to eat the other. He resigned from the House in 1917 to run against Tillman for the Senate. Everything showed that he was going to beat Tillman. That is a major story within itself. I would like to trace that out a little more closely. President Wilson went to him and said, no, don't do this. He said, I need you in the House because you can deliver the votes in the House. Everybody respects Lever. So you can deliver the votes in the House for me. I've got men who can deliver the votes in the Senate. I need you there. Stay there. That's the greatest mistake historians say that Frank Lever made, because that cut off his career. Boom. Right at that point. Nothing after that. He spent the rest of his life serving dear old Clemson. And we're glad of it. And I'm glad to have been with you. I'm sorry I took too long. Every story I told that was slightly humorous, I didn't mean it. My wife will punish me, so don't pray for punishment to fall on me. I can see it coming anyway. And as the book says, thus endeth the morning lesson.
Thank you, Dr. Barrett. And don't you beat Dr. Rill. Dr. Rill, I sincerely apologize for that. That was not easy. As a student that used to come to your office to hear stories all the time, I would love to continue to hear them. But we've got 7 other stories we need to hear, so thank you. I think y'all will be here for the reception. If you haven't had a chance to talk to Dr. Rill, get to know him, hear about his books, please do during our reception times. They are phenomenal. And you will not believe the difference Clemson has made in the world. Most of us just think of little small Clemson here in town. Dr. Rill weaves it all together in a beautiful way to make you proud that you and your family are associated with Clemson. Let's show Dr. Rill our appreciation one more time. We are so thankful he continues. The other thing I'll say, if you've never gone online to watch some of his videos and stories, my favorite is the story of the Clemson ring. Just go to the Clemson website, Dr. Jerry Real, Clemson ring story. It will literally almost bring tears to you and make the hairs stand up on your head if you wear a Clemson ring. Well, now we come to the part of the program today that we've been looking forward to, and that is recognizing our inaugural class into the Frank Lever Hall of Fame. To do this process, we have asked special individuals who are either nominators, some are actually 4-H kids of these various agents, others knew them professionally in all types of various ways. And then we have various family members here that we recognize that will come and help us unveil the photographs that will be in the Hall of Fame, as well as receive a plaque that the family can decide where they would like to display to demonstrate how important an achievement this is for their family member. All of our recipients are posthumous today, and so we may not have some family here, but we will be a collective family for those that were the forerunners of Extension in South Carolina, I'm delighted to say. Before we do recognize, I think it's important to recognize those individuals with great knowledge that selected our recipients today. I know we have some here. If you would either wave from your seat or stand as I call your name. Miss Della Baker. Della's here. Carol Webb. Mr. Bud Webb. Dion Leggett. Terry Suddeth. Morris Warner. And Fran Wallach. All of these folks had roles in former directors of Extension, evaluating Extension, and we asked one individual who understands the public, Michelle Cawley, Director of Alumni Public Relations, to serve on that committee. So this group reviewed our various applications and worked hard to come up with the decisions today. Let's show our appreciation to each of them. So if you would please welcome with me the individual who will recognize Mr. Bob Bailey, known as the Voice of Agriculture in WIS Columbia, is Mr. John Paris. Oh gosh, Cathy, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm thrown off. We want to honor the first recipient, or the first individual going into the Hall of Fame is none other than Frank Lever himself. We have a wonderful picture already of him hanging over there. And to recognize that important role and that individual who started it, please welcome with me Cathy Smith from Georgetown County, who works in development down there, who is part of the State Extension Advisory Council. Cathy, please come forward and forgive me for stepping over you.
Good afternoon. I'm Cathy Smith, and I'm with the State Extension Advisory Council. Joining us today is Mr. Frank Lever, who will introduce us to his family, so I'm going to ask him to do that before I go further.
Thank you. And I want to thank Clemson University and Dobbins and the Extension Service for doing something that the Lever family has been waiting for years. I wish my parents were here. They're up on the hill, and we just visited them before we came down here. But to Ashtyn, I would challenge you to go and read his plaque that's on his grave, because it talks about the rural woman. And I'm sure today he is smiling when you got up and did the invitation. And thank you for doing that. First, I'd like to introduce my wife, Ellen Lever. She's from Louisiana, and her grandfather was actually president of LSU and Louisiana Tech, and actually used the Smith-Lever Act to take education to women in Louisiana. So we did not know that until I read his history. So it's kind of unique. Also, my brother is here, George Lever, and then I have two sons and their families. Y'all will stand up. David Lever is my oldest son, and his daughter, his wife Crystal, and daughter Lauren, and son James. And then Stephen is my youngest son, with Josh and Ryan, the little blonde. You get to meet him, watch out, he will talk you to this. But thank you again, Clemson, and we really do appreciate it. This has been a remarkable thing for our family, and we thank you all.
As we recognize these family members, we are celebrating the reality that the legacy of one man's life extends beyond the years spent on this earth. Frank Lever not only left his mark on history through his efforts with the Smith-Lever Act that we commemorate today, as we establish this Hall of Fame, he left his imprint on people, especially his family. We are so pleased that each of you could join us for this special ceremony today and the festivities at the football game tomorrow, as you witness the achievements of the county extension agents being inducted into the Hall of Fame today. It is our hope that you will feel a sense of pride to be a descendant of Frank Lever and to recognize that within you, his family is the most important legacy Mr. Lever created. It is a distinct honor that we create this Memorial Hall of Fame here at Clemson University in Lever's home state of South Carolina and at the Land Grant Institution where he served on the Board of Trustees. As we have heard from Dr. Reel, the Clemson model served as an inspiration for Frank Lever, and now in Barr Hall, which houses the state extension offices, Frank Lever's portrait will stand as a reminder of the legacy that we continue to grow every day as we support the programs and actions of today's modern cooperative extension service. In closing, we again say thank you to each Lever family member and wish you continued success in all your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy, and again, forgive my oversight. And Tom, thank you for bringing it to my attention. Now, let's move to our induction. I welcome to the lectern Mr. John Paris. John was an agricultural teacher, a graduate of ag education from Clemson, also served as director of the South Carolina Land Resources Commission, and very much a good friend of Mr. Bob Bailey, our first inductee, who after retirement served and worked in many capacities with the land resources. Let's welcome Mr. John Paris.
Thank you for the opportunity to join in honoring the life and legacy of Robert W. Bob Bailey. Bob was born on September the 23rd, 1911, and grew up on the family farm in Spartanburg County. Graduated from what was then Duncan High School, now known as James F. Burns, and attended Clemson University, where he earned a BS degree in agriculture education. He joined the Extension Service in 1937 and served until he retired in 1976. A great believer in agricultural public relations, Bob began farm news radio broadcasts in the 1940s, and he was the first person to appear on WIS television when they came on the air the first morning and broadcasting as the first television station in the Columbia area in 1953. He had a lot of famous sayings, and a couple of sayings I'd like to share with you at this point. He would say that a bell is not a bell until it is rung, not a story is not a story until it is told. And he was truly a bell ringer for the agricultural industry and shared the agricultural success story with all of those who would listen. Bob was an active member of the Main Street Methodist Church in Columbia for 54 years and a member of the Columbia Rotary Club, where he received the coveted Rotary International Paul Harris Fellow Award. When Bob retired from the Extension Service, I provided him an office in the Land Resources Commission for 20 years. He was appointed a commissioner of Richland Conservation District in 1976 and named Conservation Man of the Year in South Carolina in 1986. When I think of Bob Bailey and his love for the land, I'm reminded of a poem or an article published in the Progressive Farmer magazine many years ago entitled, I Am Land. I am land, I am trustworthy, I am loyal. I am the producer of food, the foundation of factories and banks. I provide a birthplace for your offspring, a home for your family. I have absorbed the sweat of your forefathers as they toiled over me. I have witnessed the discovery of fire, the birth of Christ, and man's flight to the moon. I'm a living, breathing entity, reproducing year after year, growing in strength, generation after generation. I am land. In the book of Genesis, we read that God placed man in the garden to dress it and to keep it. And what a wonderful way to describe Bob Bailey, because he was one of those special people that God had called on to be a keeper of the land. So as we honor him, his legacy today, let's always remember Bob Bailey as a keeper of the land. Bob Bailey was among the most distinguished agricultural leaders in South Carolina in the 20th century. A quiet man of sterling character with a superb work ethic who loved people. And he was loved by farmers, gardeners, landscapers, and others throughout the great state of South Carolina. Bob completed his earthly pilgrimage in December of 1998. He was a loyal, proud Clemson Tiger. And now, as Bob Bailey closed all of his television shows for many, many years, it is most appropriate that I share with you again his famous words: "He who plants the seed beneath the sod and waits for it to raise the clod, he trusts in God." Thank you very much. Are there any members of the Bailey family present? All right. I hit that.
Dr. Dobbins, if you would please join us. When we do not have a family member, Dr. Dobbins is going to aid and receive the plaque on behalf of the family. Present that to Dr. Dobbins. Our first inductee, Mr. Bob Bailey. Our second inductee is Mr. J.E. Barker. Today we have an individual that Mr. Barker mentored and who followed in his footsteps in his role in South Carolina. Please welcome to the lectern, Mr. Lee Keese.
Thank you, Kirby. It's an honor to be here today to have Mr. Barker inducted into this prestigious award and to have such a large number of his family here with us today. It's truly an honor. Mr. Barker was raised in Oconee County, did most of his work in Anderson County. He was a student here at Clemson College at the time, graduated in 1959, began his extension career in Anderson County, where he worked with youth and was instrumental in starting the Junior Beef Cattle Show at the Anderson County Fair, a show that grew into great prominence under his leadership over the years. He left us for a short period of time to get his master's degree at Tennessee, returned here, and became our first area extension agent working with livestock producers in Anderson, Oconee, Pickens, and Greenville counties. And I followed his footsteps when he became County Extension Director in Anderson County in 1978. He touched the lives of many people over the years, particularly youth. He coached 10 winning livestock judging teams. And as a livestock judging member on the Oconee team, I learned a lot under him in the 60s. And we won the state contest in 1968. And it was a thrill to attend the national contest under his leadership. He also worked extensively with beef cattle producers, implementing many great ideas, improving production over the years with performance testing program and bull test station. And under his leadership, we saw lots of improvement in production in the beef cattle industry. He had a great sense of humor. He was a great family man, as is witnessed by his family here today. And he influenced many people over the years. So it's with great honor that we induct him with this prestigious award today. I'll ask his son, Joel Barker, to come forward to help me unveil the plaque at this time. Scott, his other son, would you join us at this time?
Thank you, Lee. To induct our third member, Alfred F. Busby, we have the Director of Livestock and Poultry Health, an individual who was influenced significantly by Mr. Busby, Dr. Boyd Parr.
I don't have Mr. Busby's gift. I need notes. He never did. When I first heard the announcement of the A. Frank Lever County Agent Hall of Fame to honor those who dedicated their lives to fulfill his vision, the first person who came to my mind was Albert F. Busby. I'm very pleased to have a large contingent. All of his children and his widow are here, and cousins and nephews, and we're glad you can all be here. Mr. Al became Newberry County Agent in 1958, and you can calculate, but that I was 4 at the time. He came to Newberry. So he was the first face of extension I ever knew. So one of the primary reasons I have always valued and respected county agents was Mr. Busby, and also is why I have high expectations of our agents today. And maybe sometimes why I pressure them to stretch themselves a little further is because what Mr. Busby represented is what I expect extension to be. That was efficiency, effectiveness, and a desire to serve. And it wasn't just Mr. Busby, it was the entire staff that he led and the example he set. Mr. Al grew up in Anderson County. He graduated from Clemson College with a degree in dairy science in 1950. While at Clemson, Professor J.P. LeMaster, a name that would be familiar to anybody who keeps up with dairy stuff, suggested to him that he thought he should consider a career in cooperative extension service as a county agent. And he took his advice and interviewed with the then extension director, D.W. Watkins, and was hired as an assistant county agent and sent to Lancaster County in 1950. He served there for 4 years, transferred from there to Chester County, where he served for another 4 years working under county agent Pete Wilde. He then succeeded Paul Eazell in Newberry County in 1958, became the third county agent in Newberry County history. They had long-serving county agents. And he held that position until 1972. He left Extension at that time to go into the dairy business and started his own dairy farm. Luckily for us at Extension, he returned in 1979, leaving the dairy farm in the capable hands of his son and nephew at that time, and became an area dairy agent, serving Newberry, Saluda, Chester, and Edgefield counties until 1985. The 5 minutes that are allotted, and I don't want to be tackled either, so I can't cover everything, but just as an example, I picked a few highlights to go through. From the records, I can understand that under Al Busby's leadership, Newberry County was the first county to have a soil fertility program that encouraged every farmer to do a soil test on every field every year to improve yields, which was the only one in the state at the time. He also was instrumental in starting the Newberry-Lawrence DHIA, which provided scientific information to the dairy farmers in Newberry County to manage their farms. Newberry still to this day is the #1 dairy county in South Carolina, so it's a lasting legacy. Many other activities that I don't have time to mention. I'll highlight a few in agriculture. Our current agents and their vision is involved in many other things in his job, and it was all service everywhere he went. In addition to Fieldview jerseys, he served as chairman of Palmetto Production Credit at one time. He was a founding partner in Newberry Feed and Farm, which brought to Newberry County a new place option for farmers to market their crops and for livestock producers to buy feed. He was a lifetime director of the South Carolina Jersey Cattle Association and held every single office they have at one time or another. In the community, just a few of the things that I have time to mention. He was chairman of the Newberry County Board for the Developmentally Disabled. He had served as chairman of the Board of Deacons of Avalon Presbyterian Church and was on the Newberry County Water and Sewer Authority, bringing water and sewer services out into the rural areas. Anyone I mentioned when this popped up, this opportunity in Newberry to this were very willing to help. Appreciate South Carolina Jersey Cattle Association helping with this nomination, Newberry County Farm Bureau help, and retired Extension Agent Phil Perry was also instrumental and sent in a letter of support for Mr. Al's nomination. Very pleased. It's a large family here, but I want to point out to you all of his kids and his widow, Mrs. Albert F. Busby. Melvina is here with us. We're very happy to have her. His son Foster, son Hobson, and his daughter Amy Busby Hutchinson. And Amy is going to join me to get the plaque, I believe, unless you've changed.
Our next inductee is Dr. William C. Clinkscales, known to many of us simply as Clink. And he will be introduced by an individual who knew Clink personally, but worked with him as a professional. One of my dear Ag Ed mentors over the years, Emeritus Professor of Agricultural Education, Dr. Curtis White.
Thank you, Kirby. Good afternoon. I'm thankful for the technology of today because about 6 or 7 weeks ago, I got a phone call from Dr. Dobbins asking me to take a look at something. He was going to send me something. Well, I was in the middle of watching my favorite TV show, Walker, Texas Ranger. And because your name flashed across the screen, Dr. Dobbins, is the only reason I answered that phone call. Normally, I don't do that. If you got an 800 number, don't call me during the day. But anyway, I stand before you to talk about Dr. William Cherry Clinkscales. I met Dr. Clinkscales when I was a student here at Clemson in 1976. And one of the first things that Clink said to me when I came from Horry County, and one of the first things he said to me, he said, "Boy, do you know where you are?" And I said, "I thought I did." He said, "Well, do you have driver's license?" I said, "Yes, sir, I do." We were over at his house this particular morning. Many of you have heard me tell the story. And he said, "Well, I need you to do something for me." He said, "Go to the back of the house. If you got driver's license, now make sure you got them with you." I said, "Yes, sir." I saw a Lexus in the yard, and so I thought I was going to get to drive a Lexus. It really wasn't a Lexus. It just looked like one. He said, "Son, go to the back of the house and drive that wheelbarrow back to the front for me." My heart just dropped. Dr. Clinkscales taught agricultural education before he was an extension agent in Hampton County in 1969. I went to Hampton County in 1981, and they were still talking about a Dr. William Clinkscales. And I'm like, wait a minute, I can't do what Dr. Clinkscales did. So the first thing I did after they talked about him for about 2 weeks, I went home that evening and I called my mama. I said, "Mama, they're talking about somebody that I don't really even know." She said, "Well, don't worry about that, son. Just do what you do." I took what they said about Dr. Clinkscales, and of course I followed suit in that particular county. But this was a man that started at Clemson University somewhere around 1969, 1970. A very dear friend. In fact, Dr. Clinkscales was a major contributor to starting one of the first black fraternities on this campus. He and Dr. Amon Martin started that fraternity in 1974, which I later became a member of, and that's one of the reasons why I got to know him as well. Secondly, Dr. Clinkscales was a man of character. In fact, if he told you something, you can just about believe that it was going to come true. That particular fraternity has sent through about 122 young men from 1974 until April of this year. This past April, 92 of those young men were back on this campus, and we honored Dr. William C. Clinkscales and Dr. Amon Martin. As far as his work in extension is concerned, Dr. Clinkscales worked in Bennettsville, and he worked in Marlborough County and Berkeley County. I can't say much about what he did in those particular counties, but what I can say, if he did the same kind of work in those counties that he did in Hampton County, where I had to work twice as hard to do what he did, I know the impact and the legacy that he has left. If I could exert any of the influence or the same kind of impact that Dr. Clinkscales did back in those days today, I would say that this world would be a better place. He has left a powerful legacy in this area, and I know that Mr. Lever will be proud of the work that Dr. Clinkscales has done. I appreciate the opportunity for having to share just a few thoughts about Dr. Clinkscales and the fact of and the impact that he's left on my life, first as a student, and then secondly as a man, and thirdly as a fraternity member. Thank you for your time. I believe we have several family members with us. If the family members will just stand, and then if one of you will just join me up here, we'll receive the plaque. Family members, just stand, please. And also, there are several friends in the audience. If the friends of Dr. Clinkscales will stand, I know that's almost everybody.
Thank you, Dr. White. Our next inductee is Mr. J.H. Hopkins. To introduce him, we have one of his 4-H'ers from the 1940s and 50s. Ms. Dobbins, I hope that doesn't reveal your age too much. But please welcome from Anderson County, Miss Elizabeth Dobbins, one of the powerhouses behind Dr. Tom Dobbins, Tom's mother, Mrs. Dobbins.
Mr. Jesse Howard Hopkins was in my era, and he did a lot for the youth, for the farmers, all in Anderson County. He was born September the 27th, 1909, to J.M. and Mattie Long Hopkins in Cherokee Valley, Oconee County, South Carolina. He was born on the farm of his mother's parents, Jesse and Mamie Lay, the eldest of 11 children. He grew up as a farm boy in Oconee County and graduated from Walhalla High School. Having aspirations greater than that and looking at the south end of a northbound mule, Mr. J.H. worked his way through Clemson College and graduated in 1936 with a B.S. degree in vocational agriculture education. Mr. J.H. married Janie Long from Pendleton, South Carolina, on June the 9th, 1936, and they had 4 children, Jerry, Linda, Joan, and Mark. Mr. Hopkins began his career as a vocational ag teacher in Chesterfield County. Then he moved in the same position to Welcome School in Greenville County, South Carolina. In 1941, he accepted the position of farm agent under Mr. E.P. Josie in Anderson County, South Carolina, and took up residency in Pendleton. 3 years later, Mr. Josie retired, and Mr. Hopkins succeeded Mr. Josie as county agent, and a position he held for 14 years. Mr. Hopkins retired in 1958 after suffering a heart attack. During Mr. Hopkins' time as county agent, Anderson County went mostly row crop farming to livestock, grain, grassland, and Lespedeza farming. Anderson County was one of the top producing Lespedeza producing counties in the nation at that time. He helped farmers establish year-round pasture programs during his tenure. Anderson County went from one of the smallest dairy producing counties to the second in the state of South Carolina. Anderson County also became one of the top grain and beef producing counties in the state. Mr. Hopkins put many of the farming practices that he promoted to use on his farm and held demonstrations to see the practices. And he also, the Anderson 4-H Calf Club and the First National Bank Foundation were started while Mr. Hopkins was county agent. The foundation loaned money to the 4-Hers and the FFA kids to buy heifer calves. Mr. Hopkins served as director of the Anderson Fair Association, and while he was county agent, and he supervised the construction of the livestock show barn. During that time, plans for a county fire control program were initiated, and he and Mr. Curtis Pennington went to Rock Hill to bring the interest back and recommended for setting up the county system. He gives others the credit for getting the fire control system that was implemented, and he served for a short time on the Anderson County Commission. Mr. Hopkins said the fire control system was a great benefit to the county farmers. Mr. Hopkins always believed in young people. He enjoyed working with 4-H children with all their activities. He especially enjoyed the cattle shows, and especially the kids that were on the livestock judging team. Many 4-H kids benefited from time spent with him, as he was told by many of them when they would see him later in life. His belief in young people was also exhibited by his service of the Anderson County School District 4 Board of Trustees from 1945 to 1973. He served as chairman from 1960 to 72. After retiring because of his heart attack, he had to take things easy for several years, and he did a lot of fishing with his youngest son, Mark. With the planned construction of Hartwell Lake, he was contacted by the Corps of Engineers to help with the appraisal of farmland. That was going real soon to be underwater. This began another career as a real estate appraiser. He enjoyed this work because he met a lot of people all over the state, whether from the farm or towns, young or old. He loved being around people and was always there to help. Mr. Hopkins was proud to call Anderson County his home. He thought it was one of the most beautiful places in the world. Anderson County definitely benefited from all of the contributions Mr. J.H. Hopkins made to the farming world in his beloved South Carolina. Is any of Mr. Hopkins? Mark.
Thank you, Mrs. Dobbins. Our next inductee, Mr. Barrett Lawrimore, will be introduced to us by Jim Rozier, a 4-H member, and Jim is now currently moved from county supervisor to having a commission be on the department on the Commission of Highways. Let's welcome Jim, who was greatly impacted by Barrett Lawrimore. Jim.
Great day, folks, at Clemson University. It's a great day in the state of South Carolina. It's a great day in the families of these folks that we're honoring here today and recognizing here today. It's a great day in each of our lives to be here today to see this. I'm delighted to be one of the people standing up here talking about this. It's just absolutely wonderful. Thanks to Jerry Dukes for calling me and asking me to write a letter. I got to tell you, I was in Colorado riding four-wheelers and trout fishing through the Rockies when she called and asked me to write that letter. And I sat down at the table there and just spent a long time reminiscing about Mr. Barrett Lawrimore. And I can't look at his family because I'll start crying. But I spent a lot of time reminiscing, and it was just absolutely wonderful. And then I was told I had to put all this in one page. And that was impossible to put all in one page. So I tried to put the best little parts in that one page, and apparently it worked, and that's good. And then I want to thank Ms. Marilyn Lawrimore and Karen for calling me. I think I was in New Orleans when you called me then, and a week or so later, and they made me feel so comfortable to be asked to do this. You don't know what an honor this is to be asked to do this. Okay, I got to stand straight. Okay. It was 60 years ago, folks, when Barrett Lawrimore, Mr. Barrett Lawrimore, I can't say Barrett Lawrimore, that struggles with that. Mr. Barrett Lawrimore came to Berkeley County. I was 13 years old, and I was his first, I met him first as a 4-H member, and it was great. He didn't realize immediately that he came to a dirt farm in Popewood and Bootlegging County, and with Hellhole Swamp right in the middle of it. You know, but it didn't take him long to figure out that that's the kind of county he'd come to. And if he was going to change that county, if he was going to make a difference in that county, he was going to make a difference through the young people of that county. I'm not talking about where he was born. I don't know where he was born. I think he came up in Dillon or someplace like that. But where was it? Sardina? Somewhere. Anyhow, it was probably better than Berkeley County. What? Horry County. Oh, what? Myrtle Beach and all. It had to be better than Berkeley County. But he made a big difference in Berkeley County, folks. And when he was my 4-H leader, and when he was your 4-H leader, he was your 4-H leader all day and all night. And I'll tell you a little more about that as we go through here. And Dr. Real, I appreciate you showing me how to handle Kirby. Okay? I really do, because I follow that example. he was my extension agent. He taught me when we quit planting corn, we were getting away from bootlegging a little bit, quit planting corn. He taught me into taking that field and planting it in pine trees. I planted 6,000 pine trees out there. And believe it or not, much later in life, that 6,000 pine trees helped me to open a business without going in debt. You know, so what a forward-thinking person there. He taught me Robert's Rules of Order, okay? And every office I've held, every elected position I've held, every commission I've been on, everything in my life has a stamp of Mr. Barrett Lawrimore. And not just me. Over the past few weeks, I've talked to some folks in Burke County, I say young people my age, okay? They were young people when Mr. Lawrimore came there. And we reminisced together. We've talked about him. We've gotten excited about thinking back about the things we've done with him. And that's the reason I'm taping my speech, because the night before last, one of those guys came by my house at 10 o'clock and brought me this recorder and said, tape the speech, we all want to hear it. So, boy, I hope I do okay for him. This is an honor to Mr. Lawrimore. It's an honor to his family. It's an honor to us grown-up 4-Hers in Berkeley County, hundreds of us. It's an honor to the tomato farmers. He became the tomato expert of the world. I mean, if you want to know about a tomato, you just had to go talk to Mr. Lawrimore. To the migrant workers that he helped to improve their lot in life. He worked with the farmers on Johns Island, Lawrimore Island, Edisto Island, all those areas to improve their conditions. To the citizens of Charleston County, to the citizens of the state of South Carolina, who've never been so well served as they were served by Mr. Barrett Lawrimore. This Hall of Fame, I'm so delighted it started at Clemson University. And I hope that it'll just continue and continue, because there will be more and more people be recognized. I want to give you one example of a group in Berkeley County. In 1958, 59, somewhere along 1958, Truman Metz, Michael Bell, and twin brothers Jack and Gene Cribb wanted to start a beach music band. Of course, they had no idea how to do this. They came from poor family. A couple of them didn't even have running water and bathrooms in the house, okay? They needed instruments. They had no chance of getting this going until Mr. Barrett Lawrimore stepped in and helped to put it together. He became their unpaid manager, he became their agent, and their chauffeur. He put these 4 young men, they called them the Custom 4, put these 4 young men in his Falcon, his little Ford Falcon, and all 4 of those young men and him, and Barrett was not a small person, okay? Put them all in that Ford Falcon and all the instruments, and traveled back and forth across the state of South Carolina, them entertaining all over the place. And then in 1959, they won the Farm and Home Week Talent Show in the amphitheater over here at Clemson. I was the MC of that talent show, along with a young lady from Spartanburg area. It became so good, they got invited to come to the National Electric Co-op Conference in Chicago to compete in the talent show there. But when they got there, they found out they were too young to compete. So they had them entertain for the evening and play the music for the dance for the evening. So I think they liked that better anyhow. These young men, 55 years later, are still, it's now the Custom 4 and friends, and they still entertain. They entertain all over the state of South Carolina and other areas. I'm almost finished, Kirby. But they sent an offer here to 4-H. If you're going to have a big event sometime, they'll be delighted to come and entertain for free. So think about that. If you're going to have something statewide or something, they'd be delighted to come and do that. I could give you, I could stand up here all day and give you examples. There are hundreds and hundreds of examples of people's lives that Mr. Barrett Lawrimore changed. I want to thank Ms. Lawrimore and Barrett's kids for sharing him so wonderfully with us. I have grown men stand up here crying. That's ridiculous. This is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity for all these folks up here, and I'm proud of every one of them. But I know Mr. Barrett Lawrimore, and I'm especially proud of him. And I thank you folks for allowing me to share time with us to enhance our lives, to enrich our lives, and to enhance our future. And now, Ms. Lawrimore, if you'll come up here with me, if the family will please all stand and be recognized.
Thank you, Jim, and we know there are many ones who are feeling emotions in the audience because of the fingerprints of these people are on so many of us. And I agree with Jim's sentiments. Thanks to all family members who've allowed you to share the lives, because I always know extension agents, I say they work in the day so they can work harder in the evening when they're doing their programs. And good extension agents know how to set up and break down tables and chairs like all of these individuals have. Our last inductee, and though it's alphabetical, I think it's very appropriate. We have an inductee who was doing extension work before cooperative extension ever existed. And it's one of those rose among thorns, and that we're recognizing Mother Walker. And following her footsteps in her county, we have Carissa Ulmer, who is an agent from Mother Walker's county to induct her. Carissa.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today, and I am literally a product of the 4-H program. My grandparents met at a 4-H club meeting, and my parents met at 4-H camp. So without 4-H, I feel like I wouldn't be here. Dora D. Walker is the name that is spoken proudly of in Allendale County. Not only did she help the citizens of Allendale County during her long life, she influenced the lives of thousands and had a lasting impression upon the rural communities of the state of South Carolina. For over 35 years, she traveled throughout the state, working with tomato canning clubs, fostering aid to areas devastated by the boll weevil, helping to beautify and develop farm communities, and providing those communities with wholesome recreational activities. Dora D. Walker was educated in the public schools of Georgia and attended what is now Wesleyan College, receiving an AB degree. In 1911, after 12 years as a public school teacher, she began work as a home demonstration agent. She was appointed by the U.S. Department of Agriculture as a county collaborator of Barnwell County, working with both youth and adults. When the Smith-Lever Act was passed in 1914, she already had the USDA appointment and was therefore appointed to the official position of a home demonstration agent through Clemson Extension Service under the agreement between Clemson and Winthrop colleges. As a result, she was the first person in the United States to have the title Home Demonstration Agent. In 1915, she organized the first home demonstration club in Sumter County. Her club began with 47 members and rapidly increased to thousands. The tomato clubs that had their beginning in South Carolina were important to the development of the 4-H club movement in the United States. The tomato clubs also led to the beginning of modern extension work, which spread from South Carolina to other states. From the growing and canning of tomatoes, the clubs expanded to including raising poultry, the making of clothes, and home care. Eventually, the program became internationally known, with France, England, and other countries sending girls to South Carolina to be trained at Winthrop College under the direction of Dora D. Walker. As home extension work spread into the rural communities of the state and the name of Dora D. Walker became familiar with farm women, she became affectionately known as Mother Walker because of the beneficial effect she had on their lives. Mother Walker developed an extension program that led to improvements in homes, churches, and schools. Community parks became meeting centers for clubs, farmers, school and church activities, and holiday celebrations. Under her direction, a remarkable change in rural homes of the state took place. Storerooms were built and filled with canned foods for the winter season. Home gardens now grew a variety of vegetables, and the family table became more attractive with a vase of flowers as its centerpiece. Food became more pleasing in taste through the use of recipes provided by Mother Walker. Years later, looking back on her work with the Extension Service, Mother Walker commented that the development of leadership among farm women and girls was one of her most satisfying accomplishments. When she began her work, women shunned public activities. By the end of her career, she said, even the most casual observer notices the ability of hundreds of farm women and girls to lead with perfect ease and conduct their meetings with parliamentary distinction. Dora D. Walker retired in 1946, ending a 35-year career in home extension work. She has spent the better part of her lifetime showing farm women how to live better. Mother Walker died in 1951 at the age of 93, and she is buried in Mount Arnon Cemetery just a few miles from Allendale, South Carolina. Mother Walker was indeed among the outstanding South Carolinians who began the change for which the Clemson Extension Service has been known for 100 years. I think, is there some family? This must be Miss Happy. That's right, great-grandfather.
Thank you, Carissa. Thank you all for your patience. We so wanted to have an opportunity. For those of you that were speakers, please forgive me if my presence was an impetus, but and being thoughtful of our lead building, you see it turned off its lights to let us know you're spending extra energy, people. That's what a gold lead building would do. So thank you all for presenting. To close, to invite you to some continuing activities, I welcome to the lectern again Dr. Tom Dobbins.
Well, I think Dr. Askew said it best. Wow. I think that when we look at what has transpired here today, starting with the Lever family and the vision, and I'm going to have Holly, Ben, and Haley go around and have your picture made with Mr. Frank Lever, anybody wants to. This is quite an event. Mr. Lever had a statement that I captured and I thought was great when I started thinking about what extension is. And Dr. Rio, you hit it. He didn't want it just for agriculture. He wanted it to develop the entire family because he knew the strength of America, the strength of South Carolina is the family. And without the family and without developing the entire family, we wouldn't have anything. And it says if this information, talking about information gathered at the university, were made available to the farmer, it would form a complete and absolute revolution in the social, economic, and financial condition of our rural population. And that is so true. That what his vision 100 years ago changed the face of America. And one of the things that was brought up during Mr. Lawrimore's thing, when they all was talking about it, it's kind of ironic that we talk about the family, and we know that it's the basis of the family where Mr. Lever sacrificed his family to do good for all mankind. And so at this time, I would like to, members of the J.E. Barker family, would you please stand up and be recognized? All members of the J.E. Barker family. Mr. Al Busby, the great dairyman from Newberry, originally from Anderson though. Dr. Clinkscales, which I shared the same office he had at Virginia Tech. Would your family members please stand? Now, I didn't have the fortune of knowing Mr. Hopkins personally, but my father did. And he talked about him a lot. Matter of fact, he talked about driving to 4-H camp with Mr. Hopkins. So would the Hopkins family please stand and be recognized? Mr. Barrett Lawrimore, would his family please stand and be recognized? And Mother Walker, the foundation and the person who is the soul of this whole organization, would you please stand and be recognized? Now I want to tell you, I have, if you notice with Dr. White and with Kirby, I do a lot of things. And one of the things that I do well is I have great ideas and then I pawn them off on somebody else to implement. And so I want to personally thank Kirby Player. Kirby was a driving force behind getting people's information in, sending out emails, and keeping everybody straight and getting this stuff in. He and Cena Honey out of his office, I really want to thank those from the bottom of my heart. They did a great job, and he's just great to work with. Kirby and I go way back, and we won't talk about how far back we go, but they go way back. So let's give Kirby a round of applause. Out of my office, and they are in the back, and that's Heather and Meredith. Would y'all please stand up? I see you back there sitting down. You know, when I took that position in June, I don't think they knew how to take me, and I didn't know how to take them. And people that know me best know it kind of is a learning curve, because sometimes I got this from my father. I didn't get it from my mother. I do let adjectives fly out, Lee, and especially when I think I need to get something done, and so we get that done. So they have been great to work with. Brian Callahan. He's on a hunting trip out of my office. He was really concerned about missing today, but Brian is gone with his family, and he's had some trouble in his family, and he needed this time off, and I said, don't worry about it, go ahead. I want to thank Dr. George Askew. When I came to him with this plan, he said, go ahead and go for it, and that's what I admire about Dr. Askew. He trusts the people that he hires and lets them do the things that they do, so thank you very much for letting me do this. But I want to tell you, as being a product of the extension system and being a worker in the extension system, I know the sacrifices that Mr. Barker made. I know the sacrifices that Mr. Hopkins and every one of them made. They gave of themselves. Their job was not from 8 to 5, and not as any good extension agent's job from 8 to 5. Their job is to change the life of the state of South Carolina and change it through young people. And these young people may or may not go back to the farm, but they will always remember what we did for them. The Extension Service has taken Clemson University. We are the University of South Carolina. We are taking Clemson University to the people. And that's how we made what we are doing. And that's the reason that when I had the opportunity, when Dr. Askew said, are you still interested in being the director of the Cooperative Extension Service? I won't say exactly what I said, but I did say yes, because I know the impact that it would make. I know the impact that it has made. And when they say, well, Dobbins, you got a hard bridge to climb, and I don't, because the road was paved by these individuals up here. They had the hard road to climb. They're the ones who sacrificed and gave it all to make sure that this was a better state and a better place. If you go back and look at them, and I wish, the only thing that I wish we had done was to be able to recognize them before they went on to heaven. But I guarantee you that every one of them is looking down from heaven and saying, I'm there. I'm in the A. Frank Lever Hall of Fame. And my picture will always be housed in Bar Hall in Clemson University. Whenever anybody comes there, will go down and see their history. And what a great honor it is. So let's give these 7 pioneers a round of applause.